Joseph Stalin spent the night of January 24th, 1924, watching his own name vanish. Across Moscow, telegrams ran through the wires of the Central Committee carrying a single sentence: Lenin's suppressed testament, read aloud at last. And that sentence called Stalin too rude and named Leon Trotsky the man fit to lead. By dawn, the bureaucrat who would have ruled an empire of fear was finished, and the most dangerous intellectual in Europe held the keys to a third of the world. It happened because Trotsky this time played dirty. In our history, he was too proud to bargain, too certain his ideas would win on their own brilliance. But in this telling, he swallows his contempt, sits down with Zinoviev and Kamenev in a smoke-thick room off the Kremlin's inner court, and offers them everything Stalin had refused to share. Power divided three ways: the testament, read into the record before Stalin can bury it. By spring, Stalin is reassigned to administer railway logistics in the Caucasus, a man with files but no army, watched, neutralized, slowly forgotten. And here is where the century begins to bend. Trotsky did not believe in safety. Stalin's whole philosophy had been a fortress: socialism in one country, build the walls high, survive. Trotsky believed the opposite with the fervor of a prophet. Revolution was not a house to defend, it was a fire to spread. If you're enjoying this descent into a redrawn century, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and tell us in the comments which alternate timeline we should explore next. If the workers of Germany and China and Poland did not rise, the Soviet experiment would suffocate alone. So the new master of the Kremlin turned his eyes outward, and the West felt the temperature drop. The first thing Trotsky did not do was kill people. This matters more than anything. The Great Purge of our timeline devoured nearly 1 million souls. Old revolutionaries shot in cellars, generals confessing to crimes invented by torturers, a whole society taught to inform on its neighbors. That terror was Stalin's machine, fueled by his fear that everyone around him was a rival. Trotsky had no such fear, because he genuinely believed he was right. He rehabilitated the old Bolsheviks. He shrank the secret police rather than feeding it. He purged Stalinists, yes, but by exile and demotion, not by the firing squad. A one-party state, still. A dictatorship of ideas, certainly, but not a charnel house. Instead, the violence went abroad, quieter, colder, threaded through diplomatic pouches and crates marked as agricultural equipment. By 1928, Soviet advisors slipped into the mountains of China, and the communist forces there received rifles, radios, and men who knew how to use them. By 1930, as the Weimar Republic shuddered under the weight of the crash, German communists found their coffers mysteriously full, and their ranks stiffened by veterans of the Russian Civil War. The streets of Berlin grew louder, more radical, more dangerous. London and Paris watched with mounting horror and answered the only way they knew how: blockade, embargo, covert sabotage. The Cold War did not wait for 1945 in this world. It began in the alleyways of 1930. And then came the man with the small mustache. Hitler's rise unfolded much as it did in our timeline, but the chessboard around him was utterly transformed. There would be no Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact in 1939, no cynical handshake between two dictators carving up Poland. Trotsky despised fascism not as a competitor but as a mortal disease, and the notion of dividing the spoils with Hitler would have struck him as obscene. He reached instead toward London and Paris, proposing a popular front, a grand alliance to strangle Nazism in its cradle. The democracies hesitated. They distrusted the man who had spent a decade arming revolutionaries on their doorsteps. So the alliance came late and incomplete, but it came. When Hitler invaded Poland in 1939, he did so alone, with no Soviet partner at his side. And when, in 1941, he turned his armies eastward, the Red Army that awaited him was not the broken thing of our history. This is the great hinge of the entire war. In our timeline, Stalin shot his own officer corps in 1937, 30,000 commanders executed or imprisoned, the army decapitated on the eve of its greatest test. Trotsky, the founder of that very army, the architect of victory in the Civil War, would never have committed such an act of self-mutilation. His generals lived, they trained, they studied tank warfare and deep operations while their counterparts in our world rotted in cells. So when the panzers rolled across the frontier, they did not reach the gates of Moscow. They were halted at the Dnieper, bled white by commanders who knew their craft. There was no catastrophic winter retreat. no million prisoners taken in the first weeks. The Soviet counterattack came in 1942, hard and early and brilliantly coordinated. And the war ended differently. By 1944, with Germany collapsing under a hammer blow it had not expected to survive, Soviet troops did not stop at the Elbe. They reached the Rhine. All of Germany, every shattered city, lay under the red flag. When the Americans finally completed their atomic bomb, the Japanese Empire had already been overrun in Manchuria by the Red Army, and the weapon detonated not over a defiant enemy, but over a defeated one, a demonstration aimed less at Tokyo than at Moscow. The world that emerged from this war did not breathe a sigh of relief. It held its breath, for Trotsky's Soviet Union still believed, with undimmed conviction, in permanent revolution. There was no cautious Stalinist hesitation now, no patient consolidation behind sealed borders. Soviet money and Soviet arms flowed to insurgencies in Greece, in Iran, in Korea, in the jungles of Indochina. Everywhere a worker raised a clenched fist. The American response was not the measured doctrine of containment, but something fiercer, a permanent military mobilization, a Marshall Plan twice as vast, a draft that never ended. The Berlin crisis of 1948 was not a blockade in this world. It was a siege, and twice that year the generals on both sides came within an order of total war. There was no comfortable balance of terror here, no slow détente, no decades of frozen stalemate. Just an ideological crusade fought at full volume, two visions of humanity's future grappling without rest. And the strangest turn of all came not from war, but from mortality. Trotsky's body held the whole edifice together, his prestige, his fury, his certainty. When he died, around 1956, there was no chosen heir, no testament that anyone would obey. His lieutenants tore at one another over the meaning of his legacy, and the great red block that had spread from the Rhine to the Pacific began to crack along its seams. Not in 1989, with crowds dancing atop a falling wall, but 3 decades earlier, in confusion and recrimination, as the dream of permanent revolution discovered it could not outlive the one man who truly believed in it. 20 million who died in our timeline drew breath in this one. And a war that never came was traded for a peace that never arrived. One suppressed letter, one man too proud, who this time chose to be cunning instead. The whole shape of the century turned on it. Thank you for walking this other road with us, and we'll see you at the next crossroads of history.